Good. How are you doing?
Um, we're gonna wait a few minutes for people to join, but I wanted to I wanted to do something before we started. Ready?
Sure. Yeah.
I got your quarantine song too.
Yep.
I was like dancing to it this morning.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
that's like a 90s classic.
it's too funny.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good. How
Okay.
how about you?
No, everything's great. I'm in New York.
Hmm.
I'm on Union Square, so you might hear some like a police car or something, or
Hmm.
or maybe like a jackhammer or something. But I wore my special, I lived in India for a month,
Hmm.
so I wore some of my, you know, memories from there for
Yeah.
the interview.
Oh, you mean
Uh,
the jewelry?
but yeah, exactly, the jewelry.
Ah, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was from Mumbai, but anyway, I'm so excited. I'm going to get started, but I'm really excited um, that you're here. This series is called Working from Heart, and it's a series for FarFromTimid's magazine called Honeypot. And every other week, and probably now starting every week, we like to interview people that we feel are far from timid. And we want to, I think during quarantine, it's a time where people are recalibrating. And I wanted to hear from people like you about finding their purpose in life and in work and sort of bring that to the audience. And so, our audience is, everything, it's basically uh, culture addicts, branding addicts, marketing addicts, and design addicts. And so, what I thought we do is, we'll talk for a little bit, and then I want to leave some time for anybody that has any questions for you. So, I'm thinking we talk for like a half an hour or something, maybe a little more, and then we open up to some questions. So, how's that sound?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, um, for people that don't know, Prateek is an illustrator and designer in Bangalore, and his work has graced brands like Adobe and McDonald's. But what I'm really here to talk to him about are his space escapes, and these are incredible futurist illustrations that really moved me. And so when I first saw your drawings on Instagram, I kind of like, I just literally like almost like fell off my chair. I just was, I just, in the 50s and 60s, there was, because of the atomic age, designers and architects and textile, everybody was really inspired. There was a lot of promise of like nuclear energy, but also it was like paradoxical because there was like the threat of Armageddon. But the culture was so affected by it, they literally took the atomic particles and visualized it, and that's what became sort of like the atomic age.
Yeah.
And so when I saw your stuff, when I worked at IBM, I was launching the automation um, service. And I was looking for artists that could imagine the future of work, and I couldn't find any artists like there were in the 50s and 60s imagining worlds and environments. I wish I saw you back then because you were the person I would have hired to imagine this environment. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so your work, people make a lot of futuristic films like Blade Runner, um, which are not very optimistic. I think the futuristic work that we've seen in the past 10 or 15 years, they're not very optimistic, but your work is. So I kind of, tell us about the world you're creating.
Yeah. All right. If you're talking about this whole series, Space Escape, this kind of happened back in 2018. I had just recently made a transition to like a full-time artist, and I used to spend a lot of time by myself, and in like in kind of a self isolated state, and that led to a lot of very with me going to very interesting spots in my mind and just with my thoughts. And one thing I really wanted to do was to kind of escape and travel to these imaginary spots, like imaginary places I had in mind. And so I just started creating some artwork, and without any fixed agenda. And this whole series, I think, just came about as a result of that. And I did have a lot of interest in architecture, interior design. Um, so yeah, I think it all just came together in this project in a very different, interesting way. Uh, I guess that's yeah.
Great. I mean, it's so incredible. I mean, I posted a couple like people saw, but it's so incredible. I mean, so you were in self-imposed isolation in 2018, but now we're in forced isolation,
Oh
right?
yeah, right,
So,
yeah.
you're in Bangalore, and kind of maybe can you share, I know that there are a lot of creators like you that are also part of our community. So I
Hmm.
think, curious about, what's going on in your world in Bangalore, but also how might the pandemic have changed the way you work or have changed the aesthetic at all. And anyway, even if it's a small way.
Yeah, I think the whole difference now, because of this whole COVID situation, I mean, even our entire country was under a lockdown for 2, 3 months, and we were really not allowed to step out, and we were not even just basically confined to our homes for like months in a row.
Right.
And that was a very different kind of mindset, as compared to you choosing to do this by yourself. This in this way, I mean, with the whole COVID situation, you did not have a choice. Like you had to spend that time with yourself, whether you liked it or not, and that really, pushes you to look inwards and think about a lot of things in life. And like what that's done is it's really like made me focus on what I create, how I'm creating it, and more importantly, why I'm doing that. And I think that's very important as an artist to keep pushing and keep questioning yourself to think about your work and to constantly reflect and reevaluate where you are at it and what it's actually doing. So I think in that sense, art has been so therapeutic during this whole COVID situation, and it's just uh, a very, very nice escape and really like
Yeah.
allows you to let
Yeah,
go and drown yourself, like just escape from the reality you have around you as well.
absolutely. No, I think
Yeah, yeah,
I think right, our work is sometimes a reflection of what's going on, but it's also an escape, So
yeah.
um, I think maybe the next question that I'd like to ask is then, what is it about the world that you're creating, these space escapes? Like, what is it about what you're creating that makes you want to be there? Like, what is
Hmm,
you're creating this world, but what is it about it that's attractive to you?
hmm. I think the whole of this project was rooted on the idea of escapism to kind of find my own private escape spots, like from which I could use to get away from the world around me and the crowds around me, and in a way, kind of go there and recharge myself. And it's been very nice to put myself in that state of solitude. And
Right.
I've realized like the best thoughts and best ideas for me have come out in that state. And I think
But
these artworks have
yeah,
have been kind of like they've been a mirror of me when I was in that mindset. So it's basically how I was feeling, basically just came out in that.
But like,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm gonna probe a little bit because
Hmm.
I think it's hard for artists sometimes to, I'm not asking you to explain why you're doing it, but I think it's always very interesting when someone else points something out and you're like, oh, I think maybe that, not that I'll be right or anything, but as a curiosity, your work I'm going to go back to the atomic age a little bit just because
Hmm.
there's a similarity, and maybe it's through osmosis. It's I suppose you grew up in like the 80s or the 90s or something. So
90s. I'm a
yeah,
90s kid.
yeah. So but but anyway, your colors are neon, the shapes are open,
Hmm.
it's metallic, so why that versus wood and white, black and white? You don't know, do you know what I mean? Like you could have created a world in black and white, made out of wood, made out of you know um,
Yeah. Hmm.
fabric, you know what I mean, but you
Hmm.
chose these colors and these shapes and this texture, and it's you know, uh, you know,
It's yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
painting because I'm painting you as a futurist. That's what
Hmm.
I'm doing
Hmm.
to you. I'm,
Hmm.
I'm, 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 I'm calling you that. So,
Yeah. I think the whole idea of creating something using these really shiny metallic things, it's probably because I don't really experience these things around me in my real life. So if I'm really creating something new, I kind of imagine it like my dream world and, basically just do it the way I would possibly do in the best case scenario. We don't really see stuff like this in our surroundings. It's definitely not so bright. It's not so colorful. So I think it's kind of borderlining between reality and imaginary. So you do recognize elements of it as things you see around you, but there are things that separate it from reality. And I think that's where I just use all those materials and step away from that.
so I wanted to read you something. Um,
Yeah.
so there is an artist, an architect. His name is Oscar Niemeyer, and he's a
Hmm.
famous modernist architect. Okay, he's from, and he mostly worked in Brazil. Like he built all of these incredible, and I'm sure if I sent them to you, you would totally recognize them. But
Hmm.
he did this circular museum of art in Brazil. He did the United Nations in New York, so his
Hmm.
work is very sleek and circular. And so I'm going to quote you something that he wrote. Okay. He
Sure.
says,
Sure.
I'm not attracted to straight angles or to straight lines, hard and inflexible, created by man. I'm attracted to free flowing, sensual curves, the curves that I find in the mountains of my country, in the sinuousness of its rivers, in the waves of the oceans. Curves make up the entire universe, the curved universe of Einstein. Like, does any of that resonate to you at all when I'm saying that? Like, do you do you feel any like brotherhood to his inspiration? You can say it's okay. You can say no. I'm not. You don't have to. I don't mind being wrong.
That's a great saying by him. I think what I understand from that is he was just not afraid to be inspired by things that he felt connected to and really reflect that in his work. And that's a great quality to, be able to put out what you believe in and what you really connect to and find a different way to express that.
Yeah, he's incredible. And I found just some similarities to his architecture and the architecture.
Yeah.
And I'm so you would think that you come from an architecture background, but that's not your background, right?
Absolutely not.
Right.
I think
And it's
architecture was kind of
incredible.
like, yeah, I mean, if I was not an artist, I think I would probably have become an architect.
Well, I
I
think
think.
that's, yep. So one of the things I found really interesting is obviously, in some of the space escapes, you have just like one little person, but there's not a lot of people in your
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
Can you sort of talk about, why that is?
I think when I created any of these pieces, I just imagined imagined it making for just myself, like my own private getaways. So I probably like I never thought about like filling it up with people or anything. It's just to kind of enjoy the environment for what it is and without any external agents, if that's the word.
I mean, is this,
And
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. It's just I also like I personally tend to recharge a lot, but if I'm in solitude. So in a way that it's that same kind of idea I also try to put out in a lot of my work. I just create these spaces which are empty and uh, that in a way maybe connects to someone or something.
Right.
Yeah.
For people that have just joined, I just want to this is Prateek Vatash, and we're going to leave a little time to ask questions. So if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the comment section now, and then in whatever, like 15 minutes, we'll go ahead and start asking questions. But thanks everybody for joining. Um, so do you feel optimistic about the future? We have automation and artificial intelligence. I mean, you're in Bangalore, which is India's Silicon Valley. So, do you feel, you have sort of a sense you could create an opinion, because it's not like
Mm.
you're somewhere in the country without having that influence. But are you optimistic about the future? Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, there is definitely like a lot of technological advancements, and we are progressing ahead in a lot of ways. Uh, but I also feel like on the other hand, we are dealing with things like climate crisis, and so it's in a way we are moving forward in a couple of ways, but also taking a few steps back. So it's a very interesting picture of the world that I mean, if you have to look at reality in a way like that, there are things we are progressing ahead with, but there are also things which we are not doing right.
Do you think like automation is like a good thing or a bad thing?
I think that could be good, but of course I do believe in a human touch. We
Of
can
course.
we cannot have everything replaced by machinery. It's not going to be the same.
I mean, I feel that automation is all. I think it's important. I think that when we automate some of these repetitive
Hmm.
tasks, that people can start to really, really identify what they really want to do, right? They don't have to
Hmm.
do mind-numbing work. They can do things that humans do, right? So I think so. I'm optimistic about automation. I think when that becomes a reality, I think people will start to really live their purpose in some ways.
That's quite possible. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us, Far From Timid is very much, is a culture. It's an agency, but it's also a brand, and Far From Timid is named after a Biggie Small song, so we're really into music. So
Hmm.
if I stepped into one of your drawings, like what would we hear?
I think the most expected answer, it's got a very retro synthwave, vaporwave sound, because of the whole visual style, and it's definitely got that whole retro influence to it. So I think that's definitely like the go-to. But of course, I mean, I try not to make everything super slick and super perfect. I do like to mess stuff up. So if you have to translate that to sounds, then I think it would definitely have some edginess to it as well, like
I don't see
electric
anywhere where
guitar.
you mess up in your work, honestly. I mean, every surface is so smooth. You're going to have to really, you have to tell me where that is because I don't see that anywhere.
I think that's a progression that's been happening since 2018. I really like the new work that I've been making has really been you know kind of staying away from the idea of being perfect. Like I don't want to make things that are perfect, and I try I try to add things and I try to add elements to like rough it up, and I do
That's
mess
interesting.
up
Yeah.
mess up the layouts, just do anything. You don't really have to follow any rules as such, and that's very uh I mean to grow in your own work, I think it's super important to keep experimenting in that way as well. So I think the new stuff that I've been making is just me just letting go completely and not really trying to
Hmm.
make something perfect and just really going with the process and without having any end result in mind. And that's very liberating as well.
Let go of the outcomes, 100%.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean the result could really be anything. Really doesn't matter.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think it's so maybe maybe do you think the sort of freedom like the you're letting go of the idea of perfection, which is great. And I think we all have to
Hmm.
do that. I think you know that's a very much like an agile mindset in some ways. You
Hmm.
just keep on creating. You have to get it out. You can't. And I think I used to think the other way. I used to be like your old self, and everything has to be perfect. And
Hmm.
now, we to get out ideas, just to get it out there, and you kind of are testing it in some ways. Like maybe this is something that uh, I can connect because ultimately the work that you're doing, while it's for you and it's an escape, you're also using it to connect, right? Like, look, we're
Hmm.
connecting. We are sharing together. We have you know, our audience here. So
Hmm. Of
tell
course.
me, tell me about to creators need stillness to create. I mean,
Hmm.
not all creators, but I would say most creators need some kind of stillness to really um, look inside. Oh yes, Eamon, we can. You please put your questions in the comment section. I'm going to leave like 15 minutes for you guys to ask questions. So definitely put in the comments. So tell me how you're able to create stillness. I think everybody's inside and I think everyone goes through cycles of optimism and struggle.
Hmm.
So, maybe if you can share with us how you create your stillness, how you're able to do that so that you can progress in your work, so that you can, continue and with your purpose, live your purpose, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with that. It's so important to have that kind of stillness and peace around you if you're working. And I think for me, the best work has come out when I'm at complete peace, like in the state of mind and around me as well. Definitely, like if I'm doing personal work, not having any pressure to produce really helps. I mean, I would just knowing that I have the time to really explore and put out what I want to helps. That's one way to create stillness. Um, Also, just creating a nice environment. I mean, just putting on some great music and just getting in the zone also helps to get the whole process started.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And once you know when you're in it, and once you're in it, it just you can go with the flow and s- really guide it to where you wanted to go.
Right. I think when we do personal work, time. time becomes more elastic, right? It's
Mm.
like the 1 hour that maybe you're sitting there in stillness is completely expanded into this entire, and it's beautiful. Um, I think, being able to take that and applying that to maybe some of your commercial work is,
Mm.
that's kind of what I'm trying to do also. I think because I'm here, there is few distractions. So
Yeah.
being able to do that and then sort of being able to document that so that when we're done with this pandemic, that, being able to access that, in the crazy future that, that awaits us, um,
Yeah.
you know, maybe, your work, I guess, what do you want people to take away from your work? What do you want people to understand about your work, and what kind of impact do you want your work to have?
Right. I think with all of my work, I've always really wanted to have this feel good factor to it. I definitely try to have a very positive outlook, just in terms of even if it's an abstract visual. I don't really gravitate towards more darker tones. I really like vibrant palettes, just the whole feeling of euphoria and happiness and uh, spreading this uh, nice happy vibe. I think that's one way to look at it. Uh, I do want, like, I mean, I try to be very self-expressive as well in a lot of my work, which may not be very literal. Like I do add like small bits and pieces which connect to what I'm going through at that point. And it could be in the form of like some secret codes or just like some reverse text, some layers to something which are not so obvious, but I know I've done it and I connect to that and the fact that I've let it out. And that's a very good relief for me as well. So I feel like it's everything I'm making has been very reflective. So I can really look back to stuff I did like in 2016 and I can tell what I was going through at that time.
Right. So it's not, and obviously, so you just want people to go on this journey with you. You're kind of like, this is your journey, and and it's okay, right? Like that's what an artist is about. It's not about I'm trying to do this for the world. Sometimes it's about this is what I'm experiencing. If you're
Absolutely.
experiencing the same thing, come on this journey with me. And so I'm gonna take a question. I still have more questions, but we have. I'm going to read it to you. Prateek, as a 3D artist who uses Cinema 4D to make art, do you
Hmm.
feel that the work sometimes ends up looking similar? And how do you get out of that loop? Because your work always looks so different, but it's quintessentially yours.
Oh, interesting question. I think the best thing that you can do is not compare yourself with anyone else and just really make what you want to. I mean, there are definitely trends that go around, and every year there's like a different trend and something that's popular, something that's unpopular. But I think if you're essentially doing what you connect with the most, that's when the whole magic happens. And I
Right.
mean, it really does not, you don't really have to do stuff for people. And there's a whole difference, you doing stuff for people and you doing stuff for yourself.
So what you're saying is that when you're really um, true to yourself, that the work it designs itself in some ways, and you don't get into this feedback loop of repetition because I mean as
Hmm.
if you're because you yourself personally you yourself have a lot of shapes, a lot of colors, you have so
Hmm.
much vocabulary in your mind that you want to get out, that there's it's very hard for you to be repetitive because there's so much that you're trying to get out. Is that a fair?
Probably. I mean, I mean, everyone definitely perceives what they make in their own way, and it really depends on their intention and why they're doing it, and what are they trying to get out of that as well. So
So
yeah, really depends on how you connect to what you're doing in a way.
well, I think that's really important. I think we always have to remind ourselves. I have a thing on my wall that says, live your truth. I think we always are kind of always comparing, contrasting, competitive, which brings me to my next question. You know, since quarantine, do you feel the pressure to be, to get work done, to be productive, to make a lot of work? And how are you managing? If yes, how are you managing it? And if not,
Hmm.
how are you able to close that door?
Yeah, I think productivity and quarantine, I think that's very interesting. Um, I think what I saw happening was a lot of people just started treating this whole quarantine situation as a productivity contest. Like, just because you're at home does they people were looking at it at like at how much work can you create and how productive are you, which I sort of felt was a little unhealthy. Just because we are in quarantine does not mean that we have to keep making work. We did not choose to be in this state. It's something that's happened to us, and it's put us in this. There is this mental stress already on us. So I mean, I absolutely disagreed with that. I would not put myself under any pressure to create more work just because I'm under a quarantine. I would do stuff if I feel like doing it or if it demands, I mean, if it's a paid consignment or something. But I would not compare myself to, others and seeing like, oh my God, that person did 10 artworks this week and I did not do anything. So that does not make me unproductive at all, not at all.
That's great. You have a strong mind. um, so Knit Jane wants to know what your inspiration is, and that she wants you're an inspiration for him or her. I think it's a him. I don't
It's him, yeah.
him, but wants to know what you think of, how do you think that makes the style? I guess, what's your inspiration, and what do you think about that creates your style?
Um, uh, I think it's like a big mix pot of things I like and things I connect to. So I mean, I've been a 90s kid and I grew up to a lot of music from that era, and there's this whole sense of nostalgia that's attached to that, and I keep going back to that. I keep going back in time to look for inspiration, and in a way, I connected a lot with stuff from the 80s, and I'm a huge Madonna fan. That's been like that's been very like strong to
Which
lay my phone.
Madonna though? Which Madonna? I mean, which Madonna? Is it like Material Girl Madonna, or
No, no, this is from I think 90 the time from 98 to 2006 7.
so what song?
Yeah,
Like what song sticks? Like, is it um what album? Do you know?
do you know Ray of Light?
Oh, of course. Okay, so that
Yes, yeah, that.
totally, yes, yes, yes. I went
Absolutely,
there.
yes.
I went to that concert, that album. She has
Oh
like that.
wow, yeah.
She has that like cowboyish song. It's not, I forgot what it's called.
I know it's called Don't Tell Me.
Yes, exactly. It has like that cowboy step to it.
Yes,
That's interesting.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, I asked you this. So I want one of my house. So I want to buy a house in Italy one day, and I
Mm,
want one of the rooms to have like a space escape architect, interior.
mm.
But if you could design anyone's house, with that style. If they said, Prateek, you can design anybody's just one room, any hotel, any building, any space, like
Hmm.
what space would you pick, or what person's house would you pick to design?
I would definitely want to start with my own house. Because I don't think my house looks anything like what I make. And it would be a dream to live in a space like, space like that. So I mean, I would definitely want to set up my studio space and my house and where I live to kind of reflect to that. And definitely then whoever wants to, depends on how that works. I mean, yeah, just to see how it goes.
Well, I think if Kareem Rashid is listening to this interview, I think you should, take his Pratik's designs and make products and spaces out of them. So if you're listening, um, so let's see if we have any more questions. We have, okay, Sush wants to know if what work of yours qualifies as your favorite.
I don't think I will be able to pick a favorite because everything has been created at a different point in life, and I connect with different all of them in different ways. So it's really difficult to like select one thing that I would consider a favorite.
But you have to.
Then it would be the series that we're talking about. Absolutely.
So which one?
This whole series, the space series, yeah,
Okay.
it would
Well,
definitely be
of
that.
that series, the Space Escapes, do you have one in particular that like you really always like I have one artwork that I love that I just always I like it's in my room. I put it there purposely so I can see it every night before I go to sleep. Do you have one of your pieces that is your favorite?
I do, yes, I do have one piece, and I think that's also been the most shared on Instagram for me. It's something I made on my birthday in 2018.
Okay. And
It's it's
your
it's this.
pieces don't have names to them, right? You don't name them.
No, no, I don't really name them. I
That's very interesting, So um, that's really interesting because I
I
think,
just, yeah.
like, I think, one day you might want to make people might want to hang them on their wall.
Hmm.
So, but you'll name them then. It doesn't matter. You don't have to name them right now.
Probably. I mean, that it hasn't come to that yet, but
So, Frostbite Sin has a question. Says our world has people with design taste, and and okay, our world has people with design taste and some people that have no design sensibility. So, how do you approach a person to make them understand your design, uh, or letting the design speak for itself?
I think if this is about explaining what I do, then I think I would just let what I make do the talking. I mean, if it has to be like for a client, I generally ask them what they connect to and what aspect of my work do they like and how does that connect to them as a brand or as a thing that they want commercially. So
Right.
that really helps me understand where they are coming from and how what I can offer to them.
Right. And I think there's a lot of discipline around your approach because um, a lot of strength of character in that approach because you're like, this is my world, this is what I'm creating. It for me it does this, but for you it could do something totally different, and that's great. Like um, you don't want to color your vision so that it affects the way they see your work. You want them to see it the way they want to see it, and I think I think a lot of artists, I think that's to me, I think a lot of artists, that's really important quality is like, don't ask me what it's about. How does it make you feel? That's what it's about, right? That's exactly what it's about. It's not about what I think. It's about what you think it's about. So I love
Correct, in a way, yes.
that. So, I think, so you talked about Madonna,
Hmm.
obviously like the 90s Madonna as an influence of your work. Um, can you share any other strong influences? I also, just to add to that, you said where you live in Bangalore, there's nothing like the space,
Hmm.
the qualities of the space escape. So in essence, even your environment is an influence. It's the opposite influence, but
Hmm.
so you have Madonna, you have the negative, the sort of opposite influence of your surroundings. But what other things, um, are influencing your work?
Um, I think it's also a lot of really random things like movies, and I pick up aspects of things I like from, things I absorb. Could be books or it could be movies, or music definitely has a lot to do with the, generally setting the vibe of everything. So, I mean, I'm not just talking about one artist, but I'm talking about a time period. And
So what
in a
time
way,
period? What time period?
it's the whole 80s, 90s movement. I think that's been a very big influence in a way as well. So I have been listening to a lot of that while create or while working, and it kind of seeps in, and that's really like interest. That's really nice, and I love that I can kind of infuse that same energy into things I make, because I absolutely love the whole vibe and energy of that time period in general,
Yeah.
from what I feel. And I think a lot of times, uh, if I make something feeling really happy, it kind of shows in what I'm doing, and it kind of maybe spreads the energy around, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I also just so one thing I noticed when I was looking at your work that I didn't notice before is you either have like a pool or like the ocean, kind of like an
Mm.
infinity aspect to it. I don't know. I'm just really curious about that. You know,
Mm.
do you, do you wish you had a pool when you were growing up? I don't
Yes,
know.
yes, I did. Yeah, I wish I did. Also, water is really relaxing, and everyone loves lounging by the pool. So it's generally like really nice vibes
Well,
to have water and
I love that. And I definitely feel like, right now, um, I think that you're one of the few artists that are working today that are creating these futuristic environments, and I wouldn't even call them retro futuristic. It's not like you are imitating the 50s or 60s. I mean, of course, that's some of your influence, but it's much more relevant today. It feels very now. So, I definitely, I think it's going to be very interesting, with the influence of automation and artificial intelligence and the advancements that we're making, you know, to see how artists will portray the future, Um, but I think you're so talented, and I'm just so honored that you took the time today to speak to us. So I just thank you so much. If everybody wants to see Vatash, it's prateekvatash.com, or is it?
yes, that's it. Yeah.
And and I think everybody knows you already because they love your work, they follow your work. But anyone from my community, it's prateekvatash.com. And, I just thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to post this live interview on the series on our IG Live portion of the Instagram. So you'll find it there. And if you want to join our community, just go to farfromtimid.com and you'll go scroll the bottom. You can sign up for our newsletter for our magazine called Honeypot. And just let me know, everybody, what you thought of this interview. And Prateek, I hope we can stay in touch. I think
Absolutely.
your work is incredible. I really hope to work with you one day. And I just hope that you stay safe. And I hope you stay productive and just keep creating these beautiful, beautiful environments that not you just want to escape to, but I think many of us do also. So thank you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right. See you guys.